and girls, Matt here. If you're watching this video, you're probably about to embark on doing a 3-inch exhaust on a 2.5 Navara. This video of mine is a pretty long one, so if you just want a quick step-by-step on how to get it done, click here. That'll take you to the end of the video where I've actually finished the job, and I'm going to do a bit of a quick step-by-step in what you actually need to do to achieve this job. If you want to watch the whole video where I actually go through and explain each step individually as how I do it as I'm doing the job, then keep watching, but otherwise just click there to skip to the end. So this is actually an Ignite exhaust system. I don't think it's actually a Playtime Auto Parts exhaust system. Though a lot of people on the forums and that do call them Playtime exhausts. I think they are actually Ignite exhausts. So there she is. Obviously I've ordered the silver one, not the black one. It's actually, you know, you sort of think, oh, 3-inch exhaust, yeah, no worries, but when you see it, it actually looks pretty big. I'm guessing that this is our box of fittings. It's open. No, that's our dump pipe. In there. And our fittings. So, we've got new gaskets, we've got a new mounting plate, and a couple of new studs which have got to go in the turbo, pretty sure. So my understanding is that the standard bottom studs are far too long. Makes it quite difficult to get the thing off, so everyone on the forum says remove the turbo is the easiest way, so that's what I'll be doing. And this is just Playtime Auto Parts Ignite exhausts. They're manufactured in Melbourne. Look at all that stuff they sell, so that's pretty cool. Let's take this out of the back, eh? There she is, the dump pipe. So it's got the bung on top for your exhaust gas temperature probe. It's got this sort of flat spot on the back here so that it fits in front of your body at the bottom. So there's a gasket for that in there too. That one at the back. Alright, let's get the rest out. Alright, so here we go. There's 4 bits in the box beside your dump pipe, which is over there. There's 4 bits in the box, and I've lined them up in order of fitting. So we've got, this is what I'd refer to as your drop pipe, I suppose. This comes from your dump pipe from the back of your turbo, runs down and sort of gives a curve, you know, it fits up to your dump pipe like that. Curves down around under the, fits like that, curves down around under the body of the cab. It's got a little depression in there to fit past probably your gearbox, I'd say. And this intermediate pipe here, which has got the flex joint on it, that fits up to that and runs on the bottom of the ute. Then this one, I've gone for the one with the hot dog muffler, which is got lots of little holes through it there. Bit of muffler packing on the inside of those holes. It's probably about 15 inches long, I suppose. And then finally, this is your, you know, the end of your exhaust. So those bits are the easy parts. They're all pretty well straight swap. You know, the hangers should be in the same spots. So should the plates. There is a, in that bag, there is a an adapter plate there that obviously fits under something to make it fit. But all that stuff should be fairly straightforward. The major drama, I'm told, is this.
3 days later.
And today is the day I'm going to make a start on putting this exhaust in. But first, I just want to have another quick look at this exhaust because I've had a pretty close look at it since the first part of this video. And I want to talk about the quality of the Ignite exhaust, so we'll take a bit of a look. Now it needs to be noted that this is one of the cheaper exhausts that you can buy on eBay. You know, this is the sub $500 exhaust with just the hot dog muffler there. But when we have a closer look at some of these welds, I mean, those ones not too bad, not too bad. Very rough and spattery. You know, look at that. I mean, I'm no professional welder, but I reckon I could do a better job than some of these. So, you know, you get what you pay for, a little bit, I suppose. If you look at the end, you know, nothing's ground off. It's all sharp burrs and edges sticking out. That's the tailpipe, so I might have to clean that up. But I suppose for $497 or whatever it was roughly, it's you know, it'll do. No one's going to see it, but I just thought I'd like to point that out. So if we just duck over to the ute, this is it. It's a YD25, obviously, 2010. So I've just made a bit of a start. I've just pulled one of the heat covers off. You will need a step if your ute's like mine and got big wheels and jacked up a bit, because you've got to get right down in there to get that cover off. So you can see there's, you know, a bolt there, one further down and one around the back, that you'll need a ratchet spanner to get off, or a lot of patience to get off. So that's that, and you can see, zoom in, you can see that stud just there. You know, that's where the dump pipe goes onto, and that's where it obviously has to come off to get all the rest of that off. So that's what we're making a start on today. So yeah, we're gonna we might pull this cover off. Everyone seems to say just pull the turbo off, it makes it so much easier. So I'm thinking I'll pull this other heat shroud off the top, might pop this air intake off so it's out of the way, and just have a look at what's involved with that. So let's get into it. Sometimes car manufacturers do things that I'm sure we all agree are not that smart. If we look, I'm just trying to get this shroud off the exhaust manifold, and if you look right there, you can see that that bolt is obscured by the intercooler mount, which means I'm going to have to take those two there, this here, that one there, probably, oh, they'll come off with it, the one on the other side, just to lift this intercooler up, just so that I can get that one bolt out. Why you do such stupid things, Nissan? Turns out, guys, the intercooler had to come off anyway, because if you'll remember me saying I'm going to do the whole turbo out method. So it had to come off anyway. Wasn't actually too hard. There's the two bolts there, one at the front, two on the other side, one on sort of the front and back of the motor there, a hose clamp there, and a hose clamp here, and then the whole thing just sort of wiggles itself loose. This is a good time to check out all your hoses, see how they're looking, and also, if we come and have a look at the intercooler, there is a lot of blow-by oil getting through this intercooler. So it might be worthwhile, while I've got this turbo out, having a bit of a look at the seals, look at the have a feel of the shaft and the turbo, and just determine how much play it's got, because that, to me, seems like an awful lot of oil to be blowing by. I don't have a catch can on, but anyway. So, next steps in the process, it turns out I'm going to have to go and get a couple of clamps as well, because I'm going to have to clamp this. This is a coolant divert line that runs down to your turbo. So I'm going to have to clamp that. There's another little hose just there. Have to clamp and undo that, and the one up here, and then undo these two there and around the back to take this pipe here off. Then we should be able to get this shroud out of the way, because it's all stuck by this. And then once we remove that, get this out of the way, there's our bolts or nuts holding the turbo to the exhaust manifold. So there's also that little bit there, which is for our wastegate. We probably have to set that off too. It's got a wastegate system just there. Oop, that's my finger. Oh, and this hose had to come off too, but that's just a clamp. It's just a pressure blow-by for your engine. So back into your intake manifold. So that's where we're up to. We're gonna go and get some clamps, I guess. Clamp these things and pull the rest out. Righto guys, so we skipped ahead of time a little bit. As you can see, I've got the back muffler out and the intermediate muffler out from underneath. The back muffler is really straightforward. Just undo those things, pull the hangers off, and it falls out. Just be careful as you're under there because it kind of comes out in a hurry. The middle one, a little bit more difficult, these two here. They're actually right, I can show you, but they sit right where a cross member is. So right about above this cross member here, they sort of sit right in the back there where all these cables and stuff run. So to get to it, I had to use a long socket extension with a 12-inch socket extension with a swivel on it, and they're 17mm nuts, and that's the only way that I could get to it. So I think where we last left off, I'd got the intercore off the top, and I realised I needed a couple of hose clamps. Let's climb up here to clamp that hose and that bottom hose, which is connected to this steel pipe. And I needed to do that so that I could get the heat shield out from on top of the exhaust manifold that you can see there, which I did. That's it down there. I did snap one bolt, which is okay because it's got another 3, but after I snapped that one, I went and sprayed them all with WD-40 and left them for a couple of hours just to come out a bit easier, and after that they were fine. So I undid that top pipe that comes up out of your turbo. I've taken the other side of the airbox off as well, and that allowed me to get that heat shroud out. Now it goes without saying, I think, that the next bit was a bit of a bastard. You can see down here, if I zoom in, that little 2 separated bits just there is your cat, where it bolts onto the bottom of your exhaust manifold or your dump pipe. That was a mongrel to get undone. There's 4 bolts in the top, you can sort of see all the holes there, and one that comes up from underneath, which you need like a super long 16-inch extension bar on a 3/8 socket wrench to get at. So once you've got all that clamped off, there's a 17mm bolt in there that goes through that, the undo, that takes that off. You can see the coolant return pipe just there, which we're going to have to undo. And then there's also that oil supply screw, and there's an oil return down the bottom. So a lot of people on the forum said take your wheel off, jack it up, take your wheel off, remove this flap which goes across here, because then you can access that oil return line. As you can see, it's leaking down all over everywhere, and it's much easier to get to that clamp just there to undo the coolant return. So I'm expecting coolant's going to go everywhere probably as well. There's the bottom of the turbo, you can see there's the dump pipe, there's the top of the cat, and then underneath, I don't know how well you can see that, but the pipe's just sort of dangling there at the minute. There is a, I don't know if you can see it from here, just there, there is a 14mm or a couple of 14mm bolts, one of which has to be undone to get the cat, like the cat secured to the body of the vehicle, or the body of the motor, sorry. Just there, so you have to undo that from underneath as well. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're up to. So I'm going to pull these, the coolant return hose and that oil return hose off. Might have to clamp this coolant return hose possibly as well, because I reckon that's going to go everywhere. And now we'll get that oil supply, where is it? That oil supply one undone. And then hopefully, with any luck, the turbo should just lift out. Right, so I apologise for stopping a few times during this video and skipping ahead, guys. It's just for the sake of time, because if I had to keep stopping, wash my hands, record a bit, keep going, stop, wash my hands, record a bit, it would be here all day. So where are we now? We've got the turbo out. How's that? And I gotta say, I haven't been doing mechanical stuff and been a mechanic for a few years. That was one of the more difficult things that I've ever had to do on my own. And I don't really know that it would be much easier with a couple of people, because it's very difficult to get in here to work on. So what we've done is undone those 5 bolts around the top of the cat. As I said, 4 of them you get from the top here. You need one of those multi-angle twisty bits and a really long 16-inch extension bar for your 3/8 socket to get to them. And the one on the very top right up there, you have to get out from the bottom with the same tool, which was pretty difficult. Once we got that and we undid all those hoses and all that plumbing that I was talking about, we just undid these 3 up the top here, and then held our tongue right, twisted our toes, crossed our fingers and wiggled it round and lifted it out through the top. You sort of have to move this out of your way, you got to move all that out of your way. There's coolant running down the side of the motor, there's oil dripping down the side of the motor, there's shit going everywhere. It's yeah, it's great fun. And the thing weighs about 20 kilos. So if you've got a bad back or something, you're going to struggle. So here's our turbo, which I've already taken the liberty of removing the dump pipe from. So there's our compressor, or our exhaust side of the compressor in there, and you can see it's missing a bit of the soot. I've just checked it for play, it's actually pretty good. The turbo's in good condition, so that's nice. So I just use the old rattle gun and zap the 2 nuts and 2 bolts undone. There they are there. So that's the dump pipe off, and this is the new one that will go on, like so. Now the kit comes with new studs. I realised what I said earlier about the studs being too long is actually applies to the ZD30, not the YD25 engines apparently. But this one does include 2 new studs, which will go in those blank holes so that they've got all stud and nut instead of 2 screws and 2 nuts. That's a little EGT bung, which I think I mentioned earlier. So we're not done in the engine bay yet though, unfortunately. We've still got underneath on that cat, you can't see it really from the top here, but there are 3 nuts that hold the cat to the intermediate pipe. So we've got to get down underneath, which I'm going to do tomorrow at some stage. I don't know if you'll see them. Under there somewhere. Up in front of that. It's all just hanging loose at the minute, but you've got to undo those 3. As you can see, I've got the old drain pan there because there was coolant going all over the shop. This is the view from the side. So you can see where that towel is there, there's the oil return plug. There's a makeshift clamp on that coolant plug there. There's just shit going everywhere. Under here, she's a bit of fun. So yeah, we'll get that cat there off. We'll lift it out through the top. We'll pass that pipe wherever it is under there, out through the bottom here somewhere, and then hopefully everything will go back in nice and sweet. So we'll keep on trucking and see how we go. Update: the whole exhaust is out. Thank God. That was a bit difficult. Really the worst part was the cat and the 3 bolts it connects to on the base there. It was just pretty difficult. They're 14mm nuts on their studs, and it was just pretty difficult to get anything onto them because you can't really maneuver this pipe too much because it's so long, even with the flex joint on it. It was just really hard to get anything into those 3 nuts. I ended up having to take the mount off the other side of this where it connects to the gearbox, or to the transfer case. To finally get something on it, I had to spray the shit out of it with WD-40 just to get the bolts or the nuts undone. And once I did that, you can see all the scuffs on it from trying to get it out past the body of the ute and the subframe there. So this just lifted out the top. This bit was easy enough. It was just getting to them. So he's got a big blank space now. You can see straight down underneath. Exhaust manifold there. All blank and open just here. So there you go. So getting the exhaust, the pipe, out of that gap in there is the most difficult part. So it doesn't look like all that many bits that come off it really, but yeah, that was that. So anyway, I've put the dump pipe on. I've done all these up. I've just got that sitting just in there, finger tight at the minute. I'll take all these off in a sec, and put the turbo back in, and then plumb it all up.
One eternity later.
The turbo's back in, and as you can sort of see, mostly plumbed up. Fortunate thing to note is that going back together was far easier than coming apart. The dump pipe weighs about half as much as the old one, so that's a bonus. The worst part of the whole ordeal, and the part that sliced up my hand the most, was, where is it, getting that coolant bolt back in. There's quite a bit of, like, you got to sort of put the turbo in, do up its nuts on top a bit, and then try and get that in, and hope like fuck that you've got it in the right spot. Sort of, you know, trying to push that steel hose across into the right spot. It's pretty tight in here, as you can see. And get it in there. It was a real bastard. That one, the oil one's a piece of piss. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are pretty well done. I've put this rubber flap back on. This is under the front wheel arch. I'll put this rubber flap back on, but if you look up under there, you can see the dump pipe bolted to that intermediate pipe. The hardest part about this was the bolt round the back. I had to get a 14mm spanner and sort of sit it on the top like an open-ended spanner. The bolt goes the opposite direction to these other two around the back there. It was easy to drop it in from the top, and then get my big 16-inch extension on the 3/8 bar and go up in behind there, and sort of hope that the spanner didn't fall off while I was trying to tighten up the nut. It worked, obviously. It's all tightened up nicely, and yeah, that flaps back on. That was pretty easy. If we come back up top, turbo's all plumbed back in, intake pipe back on, intercooler back on. There's only 4 bolts and 2 hose clamps that hold that on there, so that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, just hopefully I haven't cut through either of these with my clamps, which I don't think I did, so that's good. I've got the battery on the charger because I accidentally left the ignition on the other day. Let's have a look underneath. basically this here is the stock exhaust mount, and it normally actually bolts the other way around, with this bit going up, where you can see those two bolts up there, and it comes down the other way. So you get this adapter plate which bolts up like that at the top, comes out on a bit of an angle, and then bolts onto your original rubber mount with these supplied like nuts and bolts that they give you, and then that connects to just by your flex joint just there. So it's kind of you're actually better off fitting, like just loosely fitting up the entire exhaust first before you try and do this, because you've kind of got to get your knee under there and hold this exhaust pipe up so you can push this right up and get it tight so that your exhaust clears your frame just here, your subframe just there. So you kind of got to hold it up and tighten it. So that was a bit fun. So there's the next join there, just sitting nice and free and easy to get to. Underneath there's the hot dog muffler, and the next joiner, it just fits up onto your existing rubber hangers. Now that tailpipe, you can see it's actually, its little mount is actually touching, oh, hang on, you can't see that at all. Its rear mount is actually touching the spare tyre just because I've got mud tyres on the spare. You have to drop your spare down right out of the way in order to get that that tailpipe past it, and then sort of raise it back up again. So you could put something in between there if you were worried about it getting too hot and melting your tyre. I don't think I'm going to be giving it that much of a flogging, but so the existing, there's like a little ring clamp that holds your old exhaust pipe on. Basically you take that ring clamp off, and then this pipe just there bolts up to the existing sort of rubber mount. So there you go. You can see we've got, 10mm clearance there, just. It's fucking close though. But yeah, putting it back together was far easier than getting it all apart. So shit. It's worth mentioning too that when I was trying to do the coolant supply line backup, which is that shiny bolt you can see just there, I did lose about 1.5 litres of coolant. It just keeps running out while you're trying to get that done, so you kind of got to do it quickly, and you will have to top your coolant back up and probably change your oil, because that oil return plug right there, the water from up above kind of runs down straight across the top of it, and while it's out I wouldn't be surprised if coolant got into my oil. So I'm going to change the oil and filter while I'm here anyway. Put it back together. Hey, if you're watching this part of the video, you've either watched the whole thing through, well done, thanks for watching, or you pushed that little button right at the start and skipped to the end. So this is going to be the abridged quick version of how to replace the exhaust on a YD25 Navara. So let's have a look at what we pulled off first, and then we'll go and do a quick step by step. So besides a couple of hangers, this is the complete exhaust that comes off the YD25. So the main pipes are in 3 parts. You've got the dump pipe there, that's the cat, and then these are just some heat shields and other parts that come off. So basically your dump pipe comes off your turbo on that side, goes down here and hooks into the top of your cat with 5 bolts, and it's connected with 3 studs to the top of this flex joint pipe, which has got some more heat shields and so forth all over it. So that's your flex joint, comes down, connects to the front of this middle pipe, which has got your little middle muffler, and then that connects to the tailpipe with your big stupid muffler. This is probably about a 2¼ inch system, I suppose, the standard one that comes off it, but you can see, some of the restrictions in it. So it's a bit of a restrictive exhaust. So this is all the stuff that you'll need all the stuff that I used at least, to do this job. Basically, it's good to have one of these, an electric rattle gun if you got one. It makes getting some of those tough to get undone bolts a bit easier. Need 10, 12, 13, 14 in plain wrenches as well as ratchet spanners. It helps to have both because there's a couple of times where you do need to get, you know, a normal spanner on one side and then the ratchet on the other to get things undone. A pair of side cutters and pliers, flat plate screwdriver. Sort of a full complement of 3/8 and 1/2 inch sockets. So sizes ranging from 10mm or 8mm actually, right through to 21 in both sizes. And I do recommend getting the 3/8 ones as well as the 1/2 inch with some extension bars. You will need knuckles for both. But the 3/8 stuff just fits into some of those skinnier spots a bit better. And you can see I've got, I said it's a 16 inch, but I think it's actually a 20 inch extension bar for the 3/8 socket and ute. That made a big difference having that. I definitely recommend it. I've also just got a 7mm 1/4 inch there just to get the hose clamps undone, because it lets you get them undone and done up nice and tight. This, you actually need to drop your spare wheel out of the way, so you need the other part of this too that's in behind your seat. A hammer just to whack a few things, and some clamps, a couple of fuel clamps, just a big old clamp that I had laying around. You'll need a decent jack and some jack stands, some WD-40 or Ultra 2040 parts cleaner. You'll need some coolant, and I'd suggest you change your oil as well, because you're going to lose probably both doing this job. So you need a funnel as well. So, oh, and if your ute's jacked up like mine is, you're going to need a step ladder. Okay, so if we look in the engine bay, you can see the exhaust runs right down the back of the motor just there. And you can see how little room there is, if I can get the camera down there, between the dump pipe and the back of the firewall. So if you've read the forums, everyone says it's easiest to take your turbo off. Some people say you can do it without it, but I can imagine that would be a real struggle. It'd be much easier just to take your turbo off. So to do that, this is where you should probably start the job. Rip your intercooler off. So there's 4 bolts, 2 on this side, or sorry, 3 on this side, there's 2 down there. And then another 2 on the other side, so that makes 5. And your 2 hose clamps, one just there, one over there. Give it a wiggle, the whole thing pops off. Next thing you'll need to do is undo these coolant lines. So clamp this, pop that off there, clamp, where is it? Down the bottom there. You can just see the edge of the clamp, there's my finger, just there. So take that off and clamp it. Take this PCV hose off the top. There's on the standard thing, this is, the job's done, but on the standard thing there's a heat shield that covers the dump pipe there, so there's 4 10mm bolts to pull that off. And then you'll have to take this top intercooler connector pipe off, so it's just those 2 12mm bolts down in there, and that comes off. So undo that as well. Take your intake hose off, so unplug that, take the intake hose off, and then pretty well you can start undoing the bolts. Basically your original cat sits just there underneath your dump pipe. There's 4 bolts on the top that you can get to this way down. You do need that big long extension on the 3/8 socket and the knuckle to get to the one that's hidden right at the back there. This is the new one's only got 3 bolts, so it's much easier. Then to get to the last one, you've actually got to get it from underneath, so we'll have a look at that in a sec. You do need to take this front wheel off, jack the ute up, put some stands underneath it. I've just jacked it up on the frame there, and then pull this rubber flap off. It just holds on with these little plastic bungs. They pop out. Pull that off. You'll see what I mean when you can get to it, because there's the edge of your exhaust there, and your cat is basically right there. So it does make it a bit easy to get to that. You also need to get out that bolt that's just on its own right there. That's your oil return line. And then right up, oh, I can't even see it, right up the top there is the coolant supply line. It's a 21mm banjo bolt. It's got to come out, and it's a mongrel to get to. So once again, long extension, 3/8 socket, and a knuckle on the end. You'll get that out. You've got to take this coolant return line here off as well, just off the bottom. So that's pretty much that. Once you've got your cat undone from the dump pipe, come back up top, and underneath this heat shield just there, there's 3 studs with nuts on top. That's what holds your turbo onto your exhaust manifold. So undo those. You do have to take obviously this heat shield off, so there's 4 10mm bolts on that. There's one there. There's another one down there that I broke. You can't really see it. And there's one over the back there as well. So take that off and it'll just wiggle out once you've got this top pipe off. Now let's go have a look underneath. So, if I wiggle in here, next to your drive shaft there, way up in there, you can see I've put the new one on, but that's where you've got to get to the last bolt for your cat converter. So you need that long socket and that knuckle again to get way up in there, right here beside your drive shaft, and get onto it, and you'll manage to get undone. It pays to spray everything with a shitload of WD-40 and let it sit for an hour first, because most of it's pretty seized up. I'm just draining the oil out here, as you can see, which I'd recommend doing because it probably gets a bit of coolant in it as part of this job. So you can see the new exhaust. The flange is just here, sitting in mid-air. The stock exhaust, the flanges are actually sitting right above the cross members. I think it's actually in there where your torsion bar sits in, and it is a real mongrel bastard. You do need to pull this rubber mount out. You reuse it. Obviously there's an adapter plate that comes with it, so you can reuse that. It's up the other way, so you take that off. The back part of the stock exhaust comes out pretty easy. There's just some hangers and a flange down there, so rip all that out. You have to actually, there's 3 nuts and studs on the bottom of the cat, because the cat actually comes out through the top under the bonnet, but the intermediate pipe on the stock exhaust with the flex joint here comes out through the bottom. And a lot of people say take this front drive shaft off. You don't have to do that. I managed to do it without it, but I did have to take that mount off to get it out, because it runs along here, and this all sort of gets in the way, all these cross members. So that's where I use the rattle gun. Get up in there, undo those 3 nuts. They're on the studs. Pull your cat out through the top, and then pull this pipe, or your standard intermediate pipe, out through the bottom here. Slide it out the front and then out sideways. So you don't have to take that off. I managed it quite fine without it. Now, going back together, obviously once you've lifted your turbo out, which is it's heavy, so be careful doing that. Don't drop the bonnet on yourself. Trying to get your fingers caught between anything, but once you lift that turbo out, you can basically swap the dump pipes over out of the ute. So do it, on the ground. Swap the dump pipes over, and then put the whole turbo back in with a new dump pipe attached. Take the little nuts and bolts that are supplied, you can see there out of the bottom, and just put the whole thing back in, plumb it all back in as quick as you can, and then put this sort of drop tube in and bolt it up. There's 3 nuts and bolts on there, don't forget the gasket. And just do all that up. Those can be a little bit painful to get to the one at the very back there that you can see it's the other direction to the other 3. The other 2. That one there. It's a bit hard to get to. Once you've done that, just it pays to loosely fit everything up as you go. That's the adapter plate that you need. It fits in sort of lengthways. It's a bit hard to show you, but it fits in up there. Comes down onto the original rubber mount, which is actually flipped up the other way, so this is kind of backwards now to how it's fitted originally. And then it all does up. So as you put that on, it pays to have everything else sort of hanging in place, because you've got to push the whole exhaust up with your knee so that it's standing off your frame just there and your subframe, or your crossmember here, and then do it all up tight so that it doesn't fall down and rattle on your cross members there. There's not much clearance. It's a pretty big exhaust. Straightforward at the back. Just another flange just there. Original rubber hangers where your original big fat muffler is, and then just another flange. You do have to drop your spare wheel down. So drop that spare wheel down out of the way so that you can get that tailpipe through. You do replace the original clamp that's on that tailpipe or tailpiece with the, basically it hard bolts up to the original rubber mount that's there. You'll see what I mean when you pull that off. I'll go around the back and have a look. So there's like a little clamp that clamps around your original exhaust. This one just hard bolts to that rubber mount just up there using the existing nut. And there it is. That's the end of it. So I've done this job over a couple of days because we've got a sick 1-year-old mainly. But I think if you really went absolutely gung-ho at it and followed the general instructions of this video, I think you could do it in a full day, but it would be a really full day. With 2 people, I don't know that it would be much quicker. Maybe if you had one person underneath pulling all the exhaust out while the other one's up here undoing all the turbo, you might do it in sort of a couple of hours less. If you went helpful leather, you could probably get it done in maybe 5 or 6 hours. But it is a bit of a job, and you do need all those tools. So if you don't have at least a half decent toolkit with some of these long extensions and some good ratchet spanners and some clamps and stuff, probably don't attempt it without that, because you'll have a real hard time. So there you go. Hopefully that's explained everything. Obviously once you put your turbo back in, you put that heat shield back on, plumb everything back up as it was, put your intercooler back on top, and you're pretty well done. That's just sitting loose because I'm about to refill that oil. Yeah, so hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like it. If you didn't, you know what to do. Message me if you've got any comments, questions, queries, and I'll catch you all next time. So quick report from in the car whilst driving up a really quiet back road. It's louder. I'm glad I got the version of the exhaust that has the hot dog muffler on it, as opposed to the straight through, because I reckon if you just got the straight through it'd be pretty drony. And even with the hot dog, it's at about 2100, 2250 RPM. It really does start to drone a bit, and it sort of tapers off again at around $2.5 grand. Don't know if you can hear that. But the turbo spool is incredible. You can definitely hear that. So overall happy with it. If that's what you're after a bit more noise. I do note that the turbo comes on song, or it sounds like it comes on song a little bit quicker. I'd have to do a bit more driving in it to work out whether it actually really does. But yeah, very impressed. Bit of a task to put it in, obviously, but I think the results were well worth it. So good luck with your own if you are undertaking it yourself, and I'll catch you next video. Sorry I'm recording this bit in the dark, but I'm guessing if you're watching this part of the video, you're more interested in hearing it than seeing it. So sit back and enjoy a couple of minutes of glorious 3-inch exhaust.